Welcome back. Tuxedo Fly Shop. Big mess here. About to throw some Welcome Back Carter on you there. For those from the 70s will know what I'm talking about. But today I want to tell you folks a fantastic spring fly. And the reason why I'm doing it is because it's February and we've been hitting mid-60s this week. Water temperature's warming up quite a bit, and you can't help but think about dry fly fishing. And it'll be here before we know it. We are like the 16th of the month, 15th, 16th, something like that. And if you really start to think about it, we're a month and a half away from some pretty cool dry fly hatches. So I get super excited and want to start tying dry flies this time of year. So the fly I want to tie for you is one that we try to push in the shop. It is a parachute hare's ear. That's right, parachute hare's ear. Hare's ear, people think of subsurface patterns, but it works really good up top. And this fly in the spring will produce a lot of fish for you. I'm going to be using a Umpqua T100 size 12, whatever your favorite dry fly size 12 hook is, 12s, 14s. You can get down to 16s if you want to, but typically the bugs in the spring are a little bit bigger. So I'm more the 12 to the 14. I'm going to be using calf body hair for the parachute post. You can use calf tail, or you can also use synthetic if you would like. I'm going to be using some deer hair for the tail. For the body, I'm just going to pull it off the good old hare's mask, folks. Great material to tie with. And then the hackle, I'm just going to use just a brown, kind of a darker brown. It's got a little bit of barring in it there for that. So let's jump into this fly. Remember, if you have any questions, you can call us at 828-488-3333. I'm going to be using some black thread. So I want to get that started here on my hook. Go ahead and break that off. And I'm going to start wrapping me a thread base down to the back and then come up to the front to where I'm going to tie in my parachute post. Now we want to talk about proportions on our flies. So I like to use my scissors as calipers. So I know that that's full. That would be halfway particularly. So when I tie in this parachute post, I've got to bend this thing up. If you tie your post up in here, when you go to fold it up, everything's going to be sticking out over the eye of the hook. So it doesn't proportion well. It doesn't cast well. So I like to err on the side of caution and bring it back a little bit further. Not quite to the halfway point, but by the time I tie this in, I post it up, it's going to put it kind of in this third category. If I go, break it in thirds, that's a really good spot to be. I always split the difference. You can always dub in front of it, but just keep that in mind when you're tying parachutes. So I've taken a liberty on my hair stacker and already put in a bundle of calf body. And I love calf body. I mean, you look at those fibers, man, they are just beautifully stacked in there. They're super straight. If you get a really good patch, you can almost eliminate this stacking process when you tie a lot of these. The hair is quite a bit finer, however, it floats exceptionally well. Now, when you're using a natural material, for instance, you're not going to be able to come in here and trim that post later. So you want to go ahead and get pretty close to where you want this post to be as far as the height. So for me, I like to go to length of the shank of the hook. I'm going to spin my thread counterclockwise, and that didn't work as great as I wanted it to. I want my thread to jump back. I want to kind of get a good pinch wrap on this here. So there we go, a couple of loose wraps. Let's look at that there. Beautiful. And I'm just going to do a measure. See how that stands up? Great. I love that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start working my thread down, and I'm going to bring my scissors in, and I keep these in my left hand, okay? Right in there. A tip for you folks, if you tie a lot of flies, you want to save some time, keep them in your left hand. I want to come in here, I'm going to pull this up, and I'm going to trim that off at an angle. And what I'm doing is I'm building the taper of the fly, just like so. As you can see, now with the Norvise, see how I'm able to kind of rotate that in there like so. Now I'm going to spin this up front. I'm going to post this up. I'm going to come in front and start building up a thread dam, okay? You might say, Shannon, you got a lot of space. This is going to turn out beautiful, folks. I guarantee It is. Now I want to take my half-hitch tool. I'm going to put a couple of jam knots up against that, like so. And if you notice how this flares, if I push back on it, if we were tying a Comparadun fly, they float exceptionally well with some elk hair. This is basically how you tie in a Comparadun wing, is just what we did. But we see it, this is calf. So I'm gonna kind of pull these fibers up here. I got a few errant ones here. I'm just gonna trim those out of the way right quick. I'm gonna take my thread and I'm going to start wrapping around this post. This, in my opinion, is one of the more difficult things to do because it's slick, but we're gonna start posting up this, and every once in a while I come through and I'll secure my thread to the shank because it's stronger. I'll put a half-hitch in it just in case something goes bad. And what I'll do with the Norvise is I'm going to rotate this toward me, and I'm just making those nice wraps. Now this is where I'm going to tie in the stem of the hackle. So if I only come into this area here, that's as high as I want to be able to go with that hackle, okay? I like to heavily hackle my parachute flies. You certainly do what you want to. So I'm gonna walk it up maybe just a little bit more, folks, right there. I'm gonna walk it back down, and you see how we brought that together. That's beautiful. You see that? That gets me so excited. Oops, right there. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to trim out these few little errant fibers, which we wouldn't see anyway. Now I'm just going to walk my thread back here to the back, and we're going to tie in her tail. Okay? For the tail, I'm just using a patch of deer hair. I really can't remember what the pattern calls for, but deer floats really well. So I'm going with some deer. Got a patch, so why not use it? Stack it. Get those fibers pretty straight. You don't want to get too big of a bundle, but you don't want too small of a bundle. That looks great. Now, as far as the tails, I probably make my tails a little bit longer than most. For the water that we have here in our national park streams and national forest, I feel like it adds a little bit more buoyancy to them. But if you also pick up some bugs, you catch some bugs, which I like to do when I'm out fishing, and you look at them, a lot of them have some pretty long tails on them. They're not, as far as the length, man, they're not skimpy at all. So you see how I've got that tied in on the top of the hook shank, and it's really making that taper that we're trying to get on this particular fly. And that's what we're after by tying in that parachute post. We're building a natural taper. We're making a fly that's going to be proportioned well. It's going to float well, and it's going to perform on the water there for you. So, but you can see, the deer, just gives a nice tail. I like deer. I like moose. Moose makes a wonderful tail as well. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to use our body material, which is going to be the fur off of a hare's mask. You can get this in a couple of ways. You can get this that's already in a packet, or if you're like to me, I like to get the mask itself. I can't remember what these are selling for now. There is a bunch of material on this. You can see where I have scraped off this ear area here. When you have the mask, you have the ability to pick what fibers you want. You get some fibers that are real spiky. You get some fibers that are not quite as spiky. That's up to you. You get light colored fibers. You get dark colored fibers. One of the things you can do, if you can pick up an inexpensive coffee grinder. You can also get you a inexpensive shaver. You can shave these fibers off. You can put them in the blender. You can kind of take that grinder, mix them up to create you bags of dubbing. You can add some UV dubbing to it if you want to come up with some cool blends, of course, okay? I like to use the Hares mask for my IDK fly as well, but I'm just going to come in here and I like the colors of these fibers today. So I'm picking. I'm just picking, folks. Okay, that's all I'm doing. I just kind of like these in here. That's all we're doing. I'm not getting too funky. All right, see how it's stuck to my finger? So I'm going to take this here, and let's see if we can get us a pretty good body on here today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my Norvise, I'm going to start spinning this onto my thread like so. You can't do this unless you're using a Norvise. So I'm going to hold that right there, and I'm going to walk this dubbing noodle back here to the back and start building my taper as I come up. And this is going to be a little spiky, which I like, but as it gets wet, it's going to lay down there for you. Okay, you see how I'm rotating that and I'm building that body up on this particular fly, just like so. I'm going to come in front, I'm going to slide that off right there. So just like that with the vise, we put our body on there. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take our hackle. I hope that turned out okay on the camera. I'm sure it did. Justin's got that Sony doing its thing over there today. Sony, right?
Yeah.
Okay, Sony. Yep.
Now, can you do that dubbing brush with any dubbing, or does it have to be like a swirl dub?
That's a great question. You can do it with a lot of different dubbings. The thread, can have a lot to do with it. Nano silk. This one's not nano silk. Nano silk is slicker. This one here is what they called our classic wax thread there. Once you get the gist of that, that's one of the benefits of this is you can dub the body. I don't always do it like that. There's instances where I still do them like this. Just depends on the material that I'm using. You find that some materials dub easier than others. Yeah. But I really love how Hares dubbing or off the mask itself works. I think you get such a natural body with it, and why not take advantage? You saw how quick I did that.
People tie like waltz worms and stuff like that.
It's amazing. And the other thing too, I feel that's important is by using a mask, is when you can kind of pick and choose where you're pulling the hair off of here to get the body type you're looking for. Not every bug out there is perfect and symmetrical and things. I mean, they live a rough life, so. I feel like that if I have a body, especially a subsurface body that is spiky, it fishes better. But that's my belief. Yeah. That doesn't mean it's always the case. But if I believe it, I'm probably going to fish it harder. Yep. And I will have more success with it. Okay. So what I want to do now is I want to take our rooster feather here. This is for dry flies, so it's got more stiffer barbules. And I'm going to hold the shiny side toward the camera, the dull side toward me. And in this particular case, I'm going to strip off the top barbules. And the reason why I'm going to do that is when I tie in this feather, I want this stem to be tied to the post. And that way when I wrap it, you'll see it flare up in a minute. So I'm trying to give you an idea of what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, but you'll see it as I wrap it. So I'm going to go ahead and tie this in here momentarily. I want to capture that with a loose wrap. Got that. Now this is, it's not really difficult, but until you start tying up parachutes, which honestly I think parachutes are real easy to tie. This is the hardest part for some folks, is posting that up. So I'm going to work my thread back down now to this point, and we got our feather tied in. I will also stress, if you're having difficulty tying parachute flies, if you're not using long feathers like this, it can be more difficult. So if you're using our typical like cape feathers, the difference in cape and a saddle is the length of the feather. So certainly I love longer feathers, and the reason for that is I tie probably a lot more flies than the average person out there. So for me, the financial gain is really beneficial by doing it this way. But try to use the longest feather you can, and try to use the one that has the most supple stem that you can, because it's going to be easier to wrap it, regardless if it's a parachute or a regular style like a mayfly. So here in this case, I've got this little bit of hairs left over, and I'm just going to dub it on there like so. That would be your traditional. Justin's just dropping his phone over here, I believe. GoPro. And GoPro. So as you can see, what I've done right here is I've really completed that body, and I'm going to take my thread and I want to lay it over this way, okay? And the reason for that is you'll see in a minute, I'm going to take my tension knob, and I'm going to lock it in place, and I'm going to start wrapping this hackle. I want to kind of rotate a little bit so you can see, but I typically turn it away from me when I'm wrapping. At this point, this is typically the angle I turn it at. I am wrapping down the post, okay? Now with my thread over here, I'm going to come underneath. I'm going to go above the eye and underneath. I'm going to capture that. This is one thing that the guys at Norvise didn't think really much about, but I do this and I showed them. I can hold my thread and I can rotate my vise and I can manipulate it around the parachute post just like so, instead of trying to go around it your traditional way. You got a couple of different ways you can lock down your parachute post. You can actually whip finish on the post here, which some people do, and lock it down that way. You can take super glue, put it on your thread, make a few wraps, let it set, snip your thread, and you're locked in place. UV resin, I've seen people do UV, pop it that way too. Yep. I kind of do it kind of a combination there. So I'm gonna rotate this here. I'm trying to, I can't really show you, but I'm got that trimmed out of the way. So I'm gonna come around one more time. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull these fibers back and I'm gonna wrap this reverse style here. And I'm gonna come in here with my half hitch tool. I'm gonna put a half hitch right there. Carefully not trapping many of those fibers. Then what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna do a couple of whip finishes and that fly will be complete at that particular point. I can do that really quick and get a really clean eye out of this particular, out of parachutes. Boom, just like that. And we're done with this particular fly. And then all we do is you just kind of come in here, manipulate your fibers back into place, your hackle fibers, and you are set. That's, at the end of the day, folks, that's all there is to this. There's not a whole lot to tying parachutes. I think at first they're intimidating, but let's keep in mind here, first and foremost, if you're doing a wolf style wing, you're going to have a large stack of this and you've got to split it. You got to figure eight it. Here, we've only got one stack we have to work with. Number two, what I like about parachute dry flies is they set a little bit lower in a water column. I think that's important. I think it looks more natural, personally. I feel like parachute flies, once again, it's an opinion, not a fact. I feel like they would outfish a regular wolf style pattern, but being very similar. Give this fly a try, folks. All you got to do is just change up your colors of your hair. You can have lighter ones, darker ones with it, but this is an excellent spring pattern that works well here for us. And I know it works well in other places, often overlooked. If you want any of the materials, anything, flyshopusa.com. We have the vices and stuff there as well. Appreciate you folks for watching. Be sure to hit that notification bell for when the next videos come out. Y'all take care, and we'll catch you on the next one. See yous.